Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Anywhere Uni live podcast. Today I'm with Cindy, student recruitment manager at Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec. Hi, Cindy. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Quebec and Montreal, it's a hotspot for international students. I think Montreal is elected very regularly one of the best cities to
Best student city in North America. That's right. Yes.
exactly, and very high in the world for student life. It's definitely a place that interests a lot of our students, and so we're delighted to have you today. So could you briefly kind of introduce your role at Concordia University before we engage in the conversation?
Yes, of course. Alors, bonjour. Hello again. So, my name is Cindy Tam, and I'm the manager of student recruitment. So, basically, I work with high school students all over the world, and we help them with figuring out if Concordia is a good fit for them to attend university. I've been at Concordia for almost 10 years now, so I know the programs really well. I was also born and raised in Montreal, so I've got lots of love for the city if ever you have questions about that.
No, it's great. So we probably have some questions also about the culture and the bilingualism in this city that's very unique because it's so hybrid, right, between the anglophone and the francophone culture and languages.
Yeah, that's right. So in Quebec, the official language is French. On parle français au Québec. But Concordia is an Anglophone university. So all the courses are in English. So it's a really interesting mix because you get to study in English, perfect your English, all while living in a beautiful, vibrant French city. So it's a very interesting cultural mix for sure.
How would you describe? I know Concordia is a big, large institution. How would you describe Concordia to introduce it? Like, if we look at the landscape of higher education around the world, what type of institution is Concordia?
Great question. There's so much to say. So Concordia is definitely a large university. We have 50,000 students. It's practically its own city. And we have 110 programs across four faculties, two different campuses. So it's very, very large. One of the things I appreciate the most about Concordia is its commitment to being like more of a community thing. So it's like, how do you find community among 50,000 students? That seems like a little bit hard. But actually, Concordia makes a lot of efforts to create lots of small communities. One example of this that's very simple is that our class sizes are pretty small. You'd expect in a large university like ours, amphitheaters, 500 students or something. Nope. Those don't exist at Concordia at all. So most of the class sizes are about 60 students or less. So that's considered pretty small for such a large university. And then aside from, the class sizes, there's also lots of different efforts to create all sorts of niche and communities that are very collaborative at Concordia. So you really feel like you can easily belong to a group, a club, an association, that kind of thing, and find community quickly.
All right. So in terms of the campus, it's really within buildings within the city. Do you have an area where it's more concentrated, where all the students kind of are? How is the campus looking like?
Yeah, so we have two campuses. We have one, our main campus is in the downtown core of Montreal. So that one's really urban. It's like integrated in the city. There's Concordia buildings and then there's restaurants nearby, shopping, cafes, all that good stuff. We also have our famous underground tunnels that link our major buildings together. It's a really cluster of buildings that are very close together within the city. So you don't have to, you could just, they're all walking distance. And, it's lovingly known as Quartier Concordia. And then we have our second campus. That one is 20 minutes away to the west of the downtown core. That one's a more traditional closed campus. So it's just Concordia. It's very acute, cozy. There's modern facilities, of course, but it's nice because you're more in a quiet place of Montreal. And, on campus, you'll see profs walking their dogs in the morning. So it's a totally different vibe. So you can actually experience both depending what you're looking for out of your university experience.
And as an institution, it's a large university, so that will be kind of research intensive. It's a public institution in Canada. kind of, I think most universities are public, which kind of guarantee the quality of education across universities.
Exactly. So most of the universities, as you said, are public, including ours. That's just to make sure that all the accreditations, like the quality, like you said, they're all going to be great options no matter where you go in Canada. It's just really depending on like what programs are you looking for, what environments you want, what's important to you. So we are a large comprehensive university, so we have a lot of research. We're a pretty young university. We just turned 50 years old.
Happy
So compared
anniversary.
thank you, thank you. So that's an interesting thing because we're doing a lot of things that are, next generation. We're trying to find things with practical applications right away, working in our community. So a lot of the university's approach and strategic thinking, it's a little bit different compared to universities that have like a longer standing history.
And so if I'm a student, do you offer, with such a large university, do you offer any program, or do you have specific focuses? Yeah, what kind of academic offering can we find at Concordia?
There's a lot of choice. So we have 110 different programs. We have 4 faculties. So all the programs are split among the faculties. So I'll mention them briefly. We have the Faculty of Arts and Science that covers, liberal arts, language arts, social sciences, pure and applied sciences, applied human sciences. So whether you're looking for political science, actual mathematics, urban planning, neuroscience, all of that's part of our arts and science faculty. We also have the Gina Cody School of Engineering and Computer Science. So, obviously, engineering and computer programs. I just want to mention, by the way, that we do offer aerospace engineering and building engineering, which are very popular options. We have the Faculty of Fine Arts, which is the largest in Canada. We offer 28 different disciplines, including the ever popular film production. And then finally, we have our very reputable and well-known John Molson School of Business. So really, there's 110 programs across those 4 faculties, and many of our programs offer co-op, which is a very popular option, which is like a paid internship option.
I know in Quebec there's a bit of different. As we say, so it's like Montreal is a very hybrid city, and with different systems. When students apply to the engineering school or to the business school or to the Faculty of Art and Science, do they just apply to the engineering school, and then once they're there, they kind of choose, and then they're going to track and maybe do aerospace engineering, or and is it kind of open like we could see in the US, where you can build your credits, or do you directly get admitted to aerospace engineering, and that's what you study from day one when you get to the uni?
Yeah, so that is a little bit different. At Concordia, you do have to apply into a specific program. So you're not just going to apply into the Gina Cody School of Engineering. You'll select, aerospace, materials, and propulsion. So like very specific. Um, there's a lot of flexibility though. So sometimes students will meet me and they'll say like, Cindy, I took the wrong math class. I don't have spécialité maths. How do I get into, the John Molson School of Business, for example? Well, there's options for that. You can enter the university under another program, do your prerequisites at Concordia, and then you can transfer. So likewise, there's pathways to get into your dream program. Hopefully you get in right away. That would be the best case scenario. But if not, there's some alternate pathways. And also sometimes students start out in a program and they decide like, you know what? Communications is not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm not sure this is right for me. I want to try something else. So there's always that flexibility at Concordia. The only thing I'd say about that is like, of course, your grades have to be doing okay. Like if you're failing out of all your classes, it's going to be a bit hard to transfer. We'll need to make sure you're successful at your courses first. But if your grades are pretty good, then transferring in generally is a non-issue.
All right, that's great. That's good. Good to know for students and families. And little technical question as well, because the Quebec is unique again. In Canada, usually, and the rest of Canada, undergraduate degrees are 4 years long. So could you explain how it would work for students, let's say, with a French back or with a full IB or with a US high school diploma, applying to Concordia? Would they apply to a 4-year undergraduate degree? Would they be able to access a 3-year undergraduate degree? How does that work?
It's a great technical question. I'm going to try and explain it in the clearest manner possible. So, we make it easy for you. When you apply, you just say what kind of curriculum you did. So, you say, like, I'm a high school student outside of Canada or something. And then you don't have to figure out if it's a 3, 4, or even a 5 year program. We have some of those as well. Um, you don't have to figure that out. We do that. So when we assess your application, we look at what your schooling was, and based on that, we will award credits. And all this to say, like, the programs are generally speaking 4 years long. And then students who have completed curriculums like Le Bac Français, the international baccalaureate program, they often will receive advanced transfer credits, which will shorten their degree by about a year. So it ends up being about 3 years for most students coming from the French bac and the IB. Obviously, this depends on the grades you receive in the French bac and at the IB. It's not guaranteed that it'll be 3 years. But generally speaking, students who achieve the grades required would have approximately 3 years. The exception would be, programs like engineering, which are 5 year programs. They would become 4 years. So there's a couple of exceptions there, but it's all listed in your offer of admission. So it becomes very clear.
And so it's not only based on the curriculum you're taking, it's like let's take the French bac as an example. It's based on the grades you get that would give you these transfer credits.
Correct. Yeah, you got it exactly. So it just to illustrate this further, like if you have an 11 out of 20 in your bac, en moyenne générale, okay, you're admissible to the university. There are some programs that have a starting minimum admission requirement of 11, but with 11, you're not going to receive any of the advanced standing credits. So then your program is likely to be 4 years. If you have like 13, 14, 15, and above, then you're more likely to get advanced standing credits and then have your degree shortened to 3 years.
All right. So you actually get the credits, allowing you to graduate in a shorter period of time.
Exactly. Exactly. And
All
the
right.
credits are listed in your official transcript and everything. So
Yeah.
it looks like
Okay.
you completed them.
And I know I've had the case in the past of because then it means that these students are gonna be in classes with students that came from Cégep that maybe are year older, or students that did that year that first year, that's year zero in their program. Students that would be awarded these transfer credits, could they choose to say, "Oh, I'd like to still, I don't know, for the GPA or to ease my the getting into the university, could they choose to still do it in 4 years, or is it no, you got the credits, so now you have to move forward towards the rest of your degree?"
We're getting really technical here. So basically, when we look at your transcript, we look at two different things: transfers and exemption credits. Transfers means you've done the equivalent at Concordia, so we give you the credit for it. Those ones you can't redo because you've been awarded the credit that actually goes towards your degree. An exemption credit means that you cover the material, but we don't, but you can, it's not going to count towards your degree, so you can take the courses. So some students choose to prolong their degree to, like you said, take some courses that will maybe boost their GPA. So that certainly is possible. For all the individual cases, of course, we have many advisors here that can help you determine what's the best choice to make in your case.
Yeah, sorry for starting so technical after just a few minutes.
It's okay.
All right. So, in terms of student population, what does it look like at Concordia? Is it mostly students from Quebec? Do you have a lot of international students or students from out the rest of Canada? Like, what's kind of the student population at the?
So international students, it's about uh, 10,000, so around 20% of our population. So it's quite high. We do have a lot of students from Quebec because, this is our home. I went to school and yes, we do. But keeping in mind that, Quebec is a very diverse place. So there's people from all different kinds of nationalities here as well. And then we have Canadian students as well. So a really good mix. A lot of different cultures represented at Concordia. Like you walk down the halls, and of course, you'll hear French and English, but sometimes you'll hear languages that you just don't recognize. So it's definitely a fun, like multicultural place to be.
And so, what is the experience like as an international student in Montreal? It's there's not just Concordia. There's other universities. So is it a very, I guess, a very heavy student population? And
So first of all, let me just preface by saying if you've never been to Montreal, Montreal is like a city, but it's not as big as like Paris or New York. So it's a much more, in my opinion, approachable city. So in the city, the downtown core, there's many large universities. And so yes, there is a high student population here. It's one of the reasons that make it the best student city in North America. It's safe. There's lots of opportunities for young people. There's always different activities. As a tourist city, there's always different attractions that you can attend and explore. So there's really lots to do. I would say for international students, the experience really varies, especially if people like have not traveled much or like haven't never been to North America. Then sometimes there's a bit of a culture shock that can happen.
yeah,
Winter is always fun for the first time for international students. I'm
that
not
can
gonna
be a
lie, it's
shock
cold.
too.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. It's cold. That's when you use the underground tunnel to get to the building so you don't have to go outside. I'm just kidding. Our winters are great. They're really well managed. We're obviously very used to it by now. But it's so cute. Our international students office, they host like little sessions called like how to survive your first Canadian winter. So we really try to make help our students be prepared and enjoy it. And there's just like lots of things that are new for international students. We have Sugar Shack where we eat, maple syrup off the snow and different activities. So the International Students Office, as well as many other communities, including our on-campus residents, they organize lots of activities for international students. International students, it's like you're doing the transition from high school to university, which is already a big leap. That's hard. And then you're in a different country. You may not have your regular support system that you're used to, your friends and family. So that's why we make a lot of efforts to do lots of activities, like weekly, so that you can easily make friends. And I would say the main thing is like, just be open to people, open to friendships and stuff. You'll make friends right away. Everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's like, oh, my regular, entourage is not here. So everyone's looking for a relationship. Everyone's looking to build community. So once you have that set up, then I think that goes a long way. Obviously, we have academic supports too, but I find like at first the social and there's just a bit all the transitions can be challenging for students. So we do everything we can to make it as fun and as easy as possible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. As when I look at all the students I've helped in the past, the ones that sometimes don't make it in the first year is the ones that didn't create that bond, didn't find their people. And as soon as students find friends and people they like to spend time with,
They're all set.
they're all
Yeah.
set. Yeah, and usually it's successful. And so, in terms of because a big thing also to make friends often is to live in similar places. So, what would that look like at Concordia as an international student? Can you choose whether or not you live on student Concordia student housing? Do you have that option? Is it guaranteed? Not guaranteed? Can you also live outside? Like, what do you students usually do?
So we do have housing. We have housing on both of our campuses. In downtown, it's called the Grey Nuns Residence. It's actually an old convent that we renovated. So it's very beautiful, very tall ceilings. And that one's in the heart of downtown, like 2 minutes from the main buildings. And then we have at Loyola, we have a couple buildings there. Residence is guaranteed for international students as long as you apply on time. So I think we'll talk a little bit about admissions after, but as long as you're respecting the deadlines, then you'll be considered as part of that guaranteed group. So it's not mandatory. So you can choose to live there or not. It's totally up to you. I highly recommend it. I would say, we've done the cost comparison between living in res and living, getting an apartment in Montreal. It is actually like more budget friendly to live on campus. But also the main reason why I recommend it is because it's the only time in your life when you can like open your door, walk across the hall, knock on the door and be like, hey, you want to be friends? Like everybody in res wants to be friends. It's a great way to meet people and to develop a tight knit community. Most of the international students that I meet, they tell me that all their friend groups were from people they met in res. So it's a really great opportunity for that. Our res has a mandatory meal plan. So if you choose to live in our campuses, then like all your food is taken care of, breakfast, lunch, dinner, like you can eat all day long as much as you want. Nobody's counting. So that's another nice thing. You don't have to think about that during your first year, so that you can focus more on, like I said, all the big changes and doing well in school. You can definitely choose to live off campus if you'd like. If you've been to Montreal, if you know the neighborhoods, if you have family here or friends, you're obviously welcome to do that. And in that case, I would recommend like be sure to join some clubs and associations so that you don't miss out on any of those social connections.
So for because students sometimes you already mentioned that that's the first thing I think you said is like we are in a francophone province of Canada, but we are a fully English speaking institution. Um, is there anything for so when you get there as a French speaking student, can you write maybe exams in French at the beginning? Can you get extra support in English? Like how do you accommodate for students that are transitioning from a fully maybe francophone school environment and maybe country to fully studying in English?
Yeah. So keep in mind that some Quebec students are also doing that transition that may have done their whole schooling in French and then, jump to an English institution for university. So there are two different, well, there's many services. The first thing I'll talk about is sort of unique to Quebec. This applies to all institutions in Quebec, but you are always allowed to submit your work in French, request exams in French, etc. So this is just something that you'll want to give your prof a heads up about so that they can make sure that they provide the materials for you. So that's an option. I would say this is a great plan B. And I do tell my Francophone international students about it that, like, just know as a plan B, you always have this as an option if ever. But I encourage students to, of course, perfect their English while they're here. So for French students, we do have le Centre des étudiants et étudiantes francophones. So these are really like support services specific to students that have that speak French and have been used to studying in French. There's both academic support as well as social support. So if you just want to meet other French speakers, you can go hang out, play some board games, have some movie nights. They have social events, but then they also have writing support. So, if you've never written an essay in English and you just want some clarity on the word to make sure that your ideas are expressed the way you want them to, like they have academic supports too. So, le Centre des étudiants francophones is one, support service that you can have. We have another one that's like university wide, so for all students, and that one is called the Student Success Center. So very similar. That one's based on skills and knowledge. They do like math prep courses, crash courses before midterms, like lots of group studying. If you need individualized help, so lots of different services offer many opportunities for you to improve if you feel like you're having a hard time in any of your courses, or even if you're not having a hard time and you want to just go explore what services are there to know what's available in the future. Yes, lots of services like that. There's a big French community at Concordia.
So before we dive into the admission application selection process, you talked a bit about co-ops, that you had some programs that allow a student to work and even be paid during their study. So could you expand a bit more on the kind of opportunities you may have? Like, do you have any opportunities for exchange to another uni during maybe for a term during the undergraduate level, or even dual degrees, or internships, co-ops, these kind of things? Are these things on offer at Concordia?
So, like I mentioned earlier, we're a really big school, and that comes with all the big school stuff. So, if you want to do study abroad, you certainly can. We have so many partners in so many countries. It's a very popular option to do it. I did an exchange to Korea, loved it. You can also join, sports, athletics. Like if you are a high performing athlete, student athlete, then that's also a possibility. Clubs, associations, all of that. Co-op is probably one of the more popular options because it's built into the programs if you apply for it. And it's really neat because you can do either alternating semesters of work, like one study just one semester just studying, one semester just working. You can also do something called like accelerated experience where you're working for like 12 to 16 months. So obviously the type of learning that you do at a job for a longer period of time is very different. So there's lots of different opportunities like that. I mean, the main benefit of co-op obviously is that the pay is really nice also while you're working. You get the networking and also the knowledge to kind of enhance what you learned in school. Our co-op students are paid on average between $9,000 and $25,000 per work term, Canadian dollars. So that's a pretty significant amount that can pay for your tuition. But again,
International students, no problem. They are allowed to engage, no limitation in terms of working in Canada as they study.
yes. So correct. There's no limitation. So when a student applies for co-op, their study permit is a little bit different. It includes the fact that the work is part of the degree, so they have to do it. So there's an allowance there for them to be working full time during alternating semesters.
And for students that wouldn't be in co-op, they're still allowed to work a little bit, but then there is a certain number of
Yes,
hours.
correct. So the study permit issued by Canada allows students to work 20 hours a week part time, so that you can still be successful in your studies. We don't want you doing full time. During the summers, when you're not studying, if you're off term, you can work full time. All of the details are in the study permit. It's important to check the details because things can change at any time. So it's important to review those.
And in terms of, we haven't talked about tuition fees. Uh, in Quebec, another thing where there's different categories, like Quebec fee, Canadian fee, and an international fee. So how does that work?
I'll talk about the international tuition rate. I'll also talk about the French tuition rate. So, the international tuition rate for Concordia, it actually depends on what program you're studying. So, programs in the social sciences, for example, will be um, less than programs that are more technical, like engineering, for instance. So, the programs really vary between 30 to 40,000 Canadian dollars. That's just for tuition, and that's for 2 full semesters for an international rate. When you consider also housing, which on average is about $12,000. That includes your room for the school year and all your meals and everything like that. The total cost is around 40 to 50,000 Canadian dollars. That would be about 25,000 to 30,000 euros per year. That's an all-inclusive price. So that's the international tuition rate. If you happen to be a dual citizen and you are also Canadian, you would benefit from the Canadian tuition rate, of course. Quebec is pretty unique. It does have some tuition agreements with certain countries. So if you are a French national holding a French passport, then you would benefit from a significant tuition discount, I guess. The tuition rate for French nationals is approximately 10 to 12,000 Canadian dollars. So once again, that plus housing and everything, it comes out to about 20 to 25,000 Canadian dollars, or approximately 14 to 15,000 euros for 1 year. So these amounts are, the base tuition. It doesn't include, if you were to receive a scholarship. We do have some international scholarships, but truthfully, we don't have any that are full ride, which means that covers everything. We don't offer any of those. Our tuitions packages tend to be, our scholarship packages tend to be a little bit smaller because we want to offer them to more students. So it's those are merit based. Those are based on your grades only. And then our financial aids and awards office also list out a bunch of other external awards, like outside of Concordia, that you can apply for. We always recommend, if you're looking for funding packages, to get in touch with our financial aids and awards office so they can inform you about like what you're eligible for as an international student.
All right, great. Yep. No, no, go ahead.
No, nothing. I
Yep.
was nothing. I was just gonna mention that if you are doing a co-op experience, then that's also something to consider. Co-op usually typically begins at the end of your first year. So it wouldn't apply for your first year, but in the following years, obviously the money you earn from co-op can go towards your tuition if you would like.
Do you have to apply to co-op while you're in high school when you apply to Concordia, or is that something that you apply to Concordia and then during your first year you apply for co-op to start in the second year?
Great question. So, in the application, when you're applying to the university and you choose your program, if your program offers co op, a little box will appear that says, consider me for co op, and you just check it off in the application. It's going to be based on your grades. And then with your offer of admission, it'll say like that you're accepted to co op. They do at the end of your first year kind of just like double check that you're doing well in school. We just want to make sure that you're well acclimated before we send you off into the workforce. But usually this is no issue. And then during the first year, the co-op office will organize some sessions so that you can learn more about how it works, what's expected, how to prepare your resume, and how the co-op program works, job selection, all of that.
Okay. And so yeah, so then I guess you are in touch, Concordia is in touch with the companies, and students of course have to apply to it as well, but you support all that the entire process.
Yes. So we have over 2,000 employer partners in our co op database. And every year we place over 3,000 students. So it's really like we collect all the jobs postings, they get sent to us through our partners. And then we post it all on one website for our co op students. So we make it as easy for you as possible. You kind of search through the co-op job board to find jobs that are interesting to you. You'll see the salaries, the hours, the location, and you can apply for as many as you like. Certain programs, we also have job match, which means we do a job fair where all the employers show up and you show up, and then you guys have like on the spot interviews. So the we help you to find the interview, the jobs, but of course it's the student's responsibility to like land the job interview and to present themselves well so that they get a job offer.
Well, thank you. That's perfect. And so now let's dive into the how do you, now that we're excited about Concordia, how do you get in? How do you, what are the criteria? How do you select students? We can take the example of a French bac. Most of our students are French bac students, but so what would be the criteria?
So actually, I think that admissions to Concordia is very straightforward. It's like very transparent, the entire process. So first of all, you would apply online on our website, and then all we're looking for in the selection process is your grades. So for us, we're going to be looking at première. We're going to be looking at all les bulletins de première. And then we're going to be looking at your first semester or trimester of terminale. So based on these bulletins, we're going to recalculate your overall average. So let's say you're at a semester school, then you have 2 bulletins in première, 1 bulletin in terminale, so 3 bulletins au total. So we recalculate an overall average based on those 3 bulletins. We are going to be looking at your moyenne générale, your overall average, and then depending on your program, we might look at your spécialités. So if you're in what we call open program, social sciences would be a good example. Poli-sci, sociology, anthropology, programs like that, we're only looking at your overall average and no subject-specific scores. So you can have any spécialité, it doesn't matter. We're just going to be looking at your overall average and the grades that you have in there. If you're applying to a more specific program like engineering, then we need to also look for a spécialité in maths and in physique-chimie. On our website, we do detail, like, let's say you didn't take maths spécialité en terminale because you decided to take something else, but you have maths complémentaire, that might be acceptable. So it depends on the program. But everything is very transparent. So if you go on Concordia's website, you look up the program you're interested in, you'll see in admission requirements, it'll say French bac, and it'll say what grade you need, like what nut do you need. It'll say what spécialités you need. It will say if, that math complémentaire is acceptable or not in lieu of math spécialité. So it's very, very, very clear. And then based on that, we offer a conditional admission. The condition is that you attain the same grades on the back exam. So even though it's conditional offer, you can still accept, you can start the CAQ study permit process, you can register for classes, register for res, like you can do all the things. And at the end in July, when you receive your final back grades, then you would submit it to us, or your school would submit it to us, and then we would just confirm that everything's good.
And so
Sorry, I just wanted to add there is some programs. Very few of them will have an additional requirement, but I would say the grand majority, it's really just based on your grades. So obviously, all the fine arts program will have like a portfolio or an audition or something like that. But most of the other programs, it's really just the grade.
All right.
And if ever you submit and there was like you were supposed to submit a letter of intent and you didn't know, we'll send you a reminder. We're like, hey, don't forget to say it in your letter, so you don't have to worry about forgetting something. I should mention oh, sorry. I was just gonna mention, because it's an English university, you do have to, have a really good mastery over the English language. It's not just, like, that you speak comfortable in it, but, like, it's gonna be academic level, so we wanna make sure you're gonna do well. So if you're in the French Fac OIB program, and English is one of the, languages you selected, then you're exempt from an English test. But if you're in the regular French Fac program, not OIB, then you do need to take an English test. So, the standard tests, TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, Cambridge, like we accept many tests, all the details on the websites, of course. But just to know that that is important and that the test needs to be taken before you apply. We will not evaluate any files that are incomplete. So if you're thinking like, oh, I'll just take my English exam in June, like we're not going to look at your file.
Yeah, so you need to have your score with you when you apply. So if you're in the OIB newly BFI,
Yes,
um,
BFI. Sorry. Yes, that's right. BFI now.
yeah, you don't need an English test. Um, if we have some students also that do the dual diploma, so they get extra US credits to get a US high school diploma on top of their French bac. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yes, yes.
model. Is that something that changes anything, or they still have to do an IELTS or a TOEFL in that
They
scenario?
still need to submit an English language test. So in that case, those students often are in I mean, it will depend. And if you're in this specific case, feel free to reach out to me and I can clarify. But most students in that case are doing the majority of their schooling still in French and only a couple of classes in English. That's not enough to satisfy our English language requirement. So generally speaking, they do need to submit an English test.
All right. Do you accept the Duolingo?
Yes.
All right. And the level, is it depends on the program, or is it the same for
No.
every program? Is it
Same for all
B2,
the
B2, C1, or
C1.
C1? Okay.
Yeah. So it is listed all the TOEFL scores you need, IELTS, Duolingo, all the scores that we accept are listed there. We do have two category of scores, which is interesting. So I'll use the TOEFL as an example. If you score a 90 on the TOEFL, excellent. That means your English is like perfect. You don't like you could just get admitted into your program. If you score 75 to 89, you can still be admitted to Concordia University. Your level of English is still very good, but maybe not totally academic. So in that case, we admit you into your program, but we add 1 to 2 English courses for you, just to support you in your first year to make sure that you'll be successful in your courses. So we do have two levels of scores, like the sort of ideal score and then the very good score as well.
I really love that about Concordia, because there's not that many universities that have that option, where usually there's a score, and if you don't have it, that's it. And so it's great that you have that option and extra and English support for these students that are almost there, but kind of need to immerse themselves into to fully get to the level required. Can a student apply before getting their first official set of grades in grade 12? That would be the first term, first bulletin terminal, or can they apply before, or do they have to wait for that set of scores in their final year to apply?
So as I mentioned earlier, we don't evaluate files that are incomplete. So they can apply. Sometimes students want to apply, submit like all their premiere and, make sure everything's there, and then they can add it later. So they can do that. Or you could wait till you have everything and submit. So on our end, we have no preference between the two. It makes no difference because we can only evaluate once everything is there.
Okay, so you still need to have to wait for it to show up. All right, and so about conditional offers, I don't know if there was still a slight change this year. I felt like it used to be quite the conditional offers were, either just get the back, or get a 12 on the back. And I feel like now some programs are getting more, the conditional offers are getting higher, 14, 15, for some programs. So is that more of an advice of, we're expecting you to maintain that kind of level, or is it really, this is the cutoff point? If you have we want 15 and you have 14.9, that's it. You need to find another, because I see some students that now they are a bit more, ooh, is that a for sure, or a bit more worried about these conditional offers.
Yeah, great question. So the conditional offers, the condition on the offer will reflect the program. So I'll give you an example. Like in the program of Études Françaises, the entry requirement is an 11. So we expect you to receive your back and receive an 11. That's what you need to do to maintain your offer. But if you're applying to like aerospace engineering, where the requirement is 16 overall, 16 math, 16 physics, then our expectation is that you maintain that at your exam because the program is very rigorous, academically rigorous. And if you don't have that, then like if you end up with a 12 at the back, that's a big difference.
Well, yeah, that's a big
So
difference.
that's a big difference, right? So if you have that, then usually we won't be able to keep your offer in aerospace because you'll likely struggle in the math and physics courses, but you're still eligible to the university. So we'll reach out and we'll be like, hey, you don't you don't meet the condition for aerospace anymore, but you meet it for these programs. Do you want to maybe switch into that? And again, like I said earlier, they can either completely switch gears and like choose one of those and pursue that degree, or they can enter a degree to do the prerequisites to eventually enter aero. I mean, our goal is not to rescind a bunch of offers, okay? We don't want to do that. So like if you're like pretty close to your condition, you should definitely contact your admission officer. That's the person who assessed your application, and ask them what the options are. Sometimes, like if you're very close, then they could be like, okay, that's fine, test anxiety. It could be like a million factors, right? But if you're several points off, then they'll offer you different options if you're still eligible to the
I mean,
university.
totally makes sense. Very fair, and I'm really glad to hear that that there's that flexibility that, at least for students, even if they're thinking, I should be fine, I should get these grades because that's the grades I've always got. But to know that it doesn't mean that you can't go to the uni. You might just have to have a discussion to see where you could go if you're really too far off, based on the program you wanted originally.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Can
that's
I add something?
yeah.
The inverse is also true. So let's say you're in a situation where during the admission, your school like just super severe. Like your school gives out like 10s, 11s, things like that. And your point, your bulletin reflects a lower grade than what you think you're capable of at the exam. You won't get into, let's say, John Molson School of Business, for example, 13 overall, 13 math. Let's say you have 12, then you won't get into John Molson, but you can get into something else except start your CAQ study permit, etc. And then in July, when you get your math grades and you got your 13, you email me or you call me and then you say, Cindy, you got my 13. And then at that point, we can transfer you into the program. And in the September, you'll start right away in that program. Obviously, space allowing. So, like the fine arts program is probably that doesn't work for the fine arts because that's like portfolio based. But if there's space in the program, then we can definitely do that. So it's also something important to know.
Well, really, really good to hear. And so that's a perfect transition to start talking a bit about and it's going to be our final main topic, about the student visa, student permit to study in Canada. Um, if you're starting the process for Concordia, but then you end up in a different program, whether because you missed the offer and then so you switch to something else, or as you just explained, you actually got higher grades on the back, so that gets you eligible for another program. Then it's fine because your student visa would be just affiliated with Concordia, whether the program is different, or would you have to restart that process?
Great question. So the CAQ and the study permit, those are the two documents that you'll need. Once you have your approved CAQ, then you apply for your study permit. You can change programs within the same university, no problem, no issue at all. What's tough is if you decide to go to a different school. So let's say you were accepted at a different university in Quebec or even in Canada, and then you're like, oh, you know what? I changed my mind. Finally, I want to go to this other university. If it's not the same university that's listed in your study permit and CAQ, you will have to restart the entire process. You'll new CAQ or PAL if it's outside of Quebec, and then a new study permit. So for France, thankfully, the you guys I mean, I say France, but I mean, there was many people here. But you can check on the Canadian government's website how quickly we process things. CAQ generally takes like 2 months, about 8 weeks or so. The study permit in France, it takes about 2 weeks. So it's a relatively quick process, but still we recommend like the delays change depending on the volume, right? So we always recommend like as soon as you're sure what school you want to go to, like apply right away for your CAQ and study permit.
Basically, as soon as you get your offer, conditional offer, students can log into the CAQ portal for the province of Quebec. They'll go to their Arima account, upload their things, pay. They don't need to wait for the back, so they should do it as soon as they have the offer and they know they want to go to that university in Quebec. They should start the process.
100%. They should start it right away. And even for things like housing, to guarantee your housing, we ask you to provide proof of your CAQ and study permit to show that you've already started the process to keep your room. So, yeah, it's important to do that.
All right. So I saw a question on the chat because people are, we are in a strange world at the moment. We're recording this in March 2025, and all around the world, we see different countries and international student is a big, it almost becomes a political thing for governments to because it brings a lot, but there's also there's tension on that on this question. So families are sometimes a bit worried, thinking, is Canada that seem to be one of the most welcoming country in the world for international students. We're very generous also after you graduate with a visa where you can stay and you can work after you gain your degree in Canada. So students, I know right now are asking me, should I apply right away for my CAQ? Otherwise, they might limit the number of students. And so the question is, if you have an offer from Concordia, does it mean that on your end, that you have a spot and that the province will approve it? Or is it really the province that's going to decide, okay, now we reached a certain limit and we're going to stop giving CAQ to students, even if they have an offer from a Quebec university?
So I'm not sure how many of the audience is like super in tuned with everything that's happening in Quebec. A couple weeks ago, maybe the Quebec government announced its allocations of the CQ by university. For us, like the number looks very similar to previous years, so we feel like it shouldn't be an issue. But of course, it's best to apply early, as we've seen in the past few years with Canada's announcements about the study permits, the new CAQ allocations. Things can change. So if you have your offer and you're pretty sure you want to come to Concordia, I would say you should apply.
But as a university, you are aware of the number of study permit that can be issued through you, so that can be reassuring on students that if Concordia gives offers, it means that you know how many spots you have, and the province is you talk to each other, so that should be reassuring. All right, that's great. So if anyone has any more questions, feel free to enter them in the chat as we're getting close to the end of our conversation. I think we covered a lot of topics. Cindy, do you see anything else that we haven't touched on, or that you think would be important to share with international high schoolers that are exploring international options in Quebec and Concordia?
I think it's a big decision that you're making at 16 or 17 if you're exploring study options outside of your home country. So don't be nervous to ask all the questions. Like, we're really here to just help you, guide you, to see if, you know, sometimes I connect students with like second year, third year French or I don't know, different nationality students to chat about what it's like. Or sometimes it's just reassuring them about the the possibilities after you graduate. So don't be scared to ask your questions. We're literally here for that. We're excited to meet you. Myself and my colleague Robert, we regularly visit Europe together. I have other team members who visit other areas of the world to meet, future students, newly admitted students. We're available in all the ways: email, chat, um, Zoom bookings, in-person phone calls. Like, we're really here just to help. So don't be scared to ask questions. Like, I would be very nervous to move to another country for 3 to 4 years. So I would want all my questions answered.
All right. So we have a one final technical question to finish with. What is the difference between honors and majors? So when students look at programs on your website, undergraduate programs, uh, are there only just one option, just bachelor degrees, or do you have different options and they have to choose specific one? Like, yeah.
Usually, when you're applying to one of our programs, you're typically applying to a major. Some of the specializations and honors are not available to first year. You'll have to apply for them later. So, what does that mean? So, a major means that the majority of your courses are going to be in the discipline that you choose. So, let's say you choose sociology, then, like maybe 60-70% of your courses are going to be related to sociology. And then you'll have like another 30-ish% that you can choose what you want to explore. Like if you're also interested in history or you want to take a um, business studies minor, like you can do that. You can add those things. Some students just choose a major and then they do a bunch of electives in different areas to kind of explore and have a whole rounded experience. Some students, they have two very strong interests. So they'll do a major in um, sociology, and then they will do a minor in that second area. So maybe political science or something. Sometimes they will extend it to a double major, which means you're satisfying 2 degree requirements. So you will graduate with double major sociology and political science. That does extend your degree, obviously, because you will need to complete 2 sets of requirements. So that's sort of how that works. Specialization or an honors means that you have a higher concentration of courses in your discipline and a little bit fewer electives. So rather than having, 60% in sociology, if you do the specialization, you'll probably have 70 or 80 percent in sociology and then the rest for electives. Honors program is the highest academic level that you can do. It means that you'll do like 85 to 90% of your courses in that discipline. You'll have very few electives. So you're becoming like a subject matter expert in that area. And there's also a research project attached to it. So, as an undergraduate student, you'll get to work with a professor and develop sort of like a mini thesis. So, the honors option is really for students who are thinking that they're probably going to do a master's and pursue graduate studies in that area so that they can kind of like develop more knowledge in the discipline and they start their research early. So when you do apply to masters and you submit your thesis, it's already developed. It's generally speaking much more thorough and deep than somebody who hasn't done it. That being said, obviously with a major you can still apply to a master's program, but if we have 2 candidates that are identical but one did an honors, like it's we'll take the honors student.
All right. That's very, very clear. Perfect. I think we've answered all questions. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Cindy, for your time.
With pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you everyone for joining and asking all these questions and discovering more about Concordia. So we'll see you on another on the next episode of the Anyone You Need live podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.